Hello and welcome. You're watching Next IAS English. Let's start today's video with an incident that recently made headlines. When Afghanistan's Foreign Minister Amir Khan Muttaqi visited India during his first press conference, he reportedly allowed only male journalists to attend, excluding women from the briefing entirely. This decision sparked widespread outrage across media, social platforms and diplomatic circles as well, with many calling it an affront to India's democratic and gender-inclusive ethos. Facing this backlash, Muttaqi adjusted the course. At his next press conference, women journalists were not only allowed but also seated in the front row, a visible acknowledgement of the criticism and India's firm stance on equality. Well, this incident reminded many Indians that gender discrimination often comes from outside, from systems less familiar with India's constitutional values of equality and freedom. But it also forces us to ask a difficult question. What happens when similar attitudes emerge not from foreign visitors, but from within our own institutions? When an Indian constitutional authority holding a position of influence and respect uses her platform to comment on women's choices. And how do we interpret all this? This brings us to today's focus, the remarks made by Uttar Pradesh Governor Anandiben Patel during a university convocation in Varanasi. With the Afghan minister's exclusionary act was a diplomatic controversy, Governor Patel's comments sparked a social and cultural debate, one that touches the very heart of individual freedom, gender rights and India's evolving values. So first of all, I want to start with what she actually said and what remark was actually made. So, this convocation was the 47th convocation of Mahatma Gandhi Kashi Vidyapeeth in Varanasi, which was happening in October 10. Now, the UP Governor Anandiben Patel made remarks that sparked debate. Now, what did she actually say? What was that particular thing that actually, spread that widespread kind of controversy, created this controversy, not only for women, but also men, for all over India and especially UP. Now, she was addressing women graduates and she said live-in relationships have become a trend these days, but stay away from it. Now, why did she say this? Now, why did she have to say that live-in relationships have become a trend and you have to stay away from it? See, she linked these living relationships to violence and exploitation, urging caution for women's safety. Now, I can understand that her intention might be good, her intention might be pure when she said that, people should stay away from it because a lot of violence and a lot of exploitation is happening there. I completely agree with the exploitation happening in living relationships, but why does it have to come at a platform like that? Why did she have to speak that? Remarks in a formal academic setting gave them institutional weight and wider impact. Exactly. When you stand in a platform with such authority, it will gain that kind of traction and it will gain that wider impact. And while she was coming from a good intention, we do not want morality lessons from our leaders. What we want is policies and laws to be made in the same. So, sparked national discussions on whether moral advice from constitutional offices fits in academic spaces promoting free thought. Exactly. I mean, why do you have to give such kind of a statement in an academic platform where you're standing in an authority position and you're a leader? You shouldn't be talking about what issues are happening. Instead, you should be talking about what are the solutions that you are giving the people of your country for those particular problems. Moving ahead, let's talk about motivation and context behind the remarks. Now, let's understand what exactly she was trying to say behind the remarks that she made. Yeah, so the concern rooted in crime reports involving women in live-in relationships. Of course, we have already discussed that she had a good intention. There was a concern which was rooted out there, but Addressing young female graduates framed as a safety guideline. Yes, she was also addressing female graduates as a safety guideline and reflected a traditional moral perspective implying risk in such relationships. Now, she was also telling about what sort of risks there are in this live-in relationship setups, and convocation platform amplified visibility and authority. Of course, that platform, it was not the right platform to say it, and it was not the right thing to say. I mean, in that convocation platform, why were you trying to give advice of a live-in relationship? You could have given advices on how successful a girl can be, how a girl can educate herself and, support her parents. There are multiple advices, multiple sort of motivations that could have been given, that could have been given at that sort of platform, and the platform could have been used for such kind of advices. Why this? And it actually raises the question, should leaders shape morality or focus on safety and autonomy policies? Yes, it's like asking a criminal that you shouldn't be doing crimes. Of course, we know a criminal shouldn't be doing crimes, but instead of implementing policies, instead of talking about the laws that could have been made, you're talking about that a girl shouldn't be in a live-in relationship. Let's see what exactly she has mentioned. I have just one message for our daughters. Live-in relationships may be in vogue right now, but don't do it. Make your own decisions about your life. You've seen what happens found in 50 pieces. Over the past 10 days, I've been receiving reports about such cases, and every time I see them, it pains me. Now, if you're talking to a criminal, you just say, if you're doing this sort of crime, it actually pains me. Instead, if we implement stricter policies, stricter laws to stop the crime, wouldn't that be better? Moving forward, let's talk about public and media reaction. Now let's talk about what was the reaction of public, what was the reaction of media in all this. So, remarks went viral, triggering divided reactions across India. Now, the reactions were divided. Of course, some people said that she was coming from somewhere, she was concernful about the girls and she was coming from a space of concern. But others said that it was victim blaming and, urged empowerment. So, the opinions were divided in the whole country, and supporters saw it as a concern for women's safety, while critics warned against moral policing and victim blaming urged empowerment. So, and here I also would like to mention that Supreme Court has upheld that live-in relationships are not illegal. So, it highlighted legal position is live-in relationship lawful under Article 21, right to live and personal liberty. Under right to live and personal liberty, Article 21, live-in relationships are legal, and it sparked broader debate on balancing freedom, safety and social norms. Now, it has also sparked debates about safety and social norms and how do we balance this freedom. Now, moving forward, let's talk about preventing crime and legal framework. Now, instead of giving such advices to the girls, what could have been done? Let's talk about that. In Uttarakhand, live-in relationships are regulated by the Uniform Civil Code UCC, and which came into effect on January 26, 2025, making the registration of such relationships mandatory for residents and foreigners with a connection to the state. Now, this law that Uttarakhand has started, here it focuses on legal protection and awareness. It does not focus on moralizing. Exactly, we don't need a moral police. Moving forward, Uttarakhand law says couple in live-in relationships must register for legal recognition. Agar aapko legal recognition chahiye, then you have to register if you are in a live-in relationship. Also, registration gives rights. Now, I want you to see this point very attentively. Registration gives right to maintenance, inheritance and protection from abuse. Now, that's a really nice point because it gives rights from protection from abuse and even rights to maintenance and inheritance. Now, penalties apply for non-registration, ensuring accountability, shift from fear-based caution to education, awareness and safety. Now, the people who are live-in relationships and have not registered yet, penalties will be applied, and I think this is the price of penalty, 25,000 or some term of jail also, it can also lead to some term of jail. But there are positives. There are so many positives of this, and this is, I think, the right kind of approach to look at modern problems, because modern problems will require modern solutions. Now, live-in relationships, they are not something which, of course, I know India is a little conservative, but live-in relationships are very prominent in India. Maybe not in small towns, but when you come to cities like Delhi, Mumbai, Bangalore, there are live-in relationships. People are live-in relationships, and I think it has become quite common with time. So, of course, there are modern problems, but modern problems will always require modern solutions. Now, moving forward, let's talk about reflection and conclusion. Afghan minister versus Indian governor. Gender bias exists both outside and within. Now, we need to understand, while we are criticizing outside people, we need to look within. There are many entities in our country that they have so openly this gender bias, and we need to fight it. We are always blaming people from outside. Of course, there are external factors also, but internally we need to look within ourselves. We need to look within our country. Outsiders' discrimination sparks outrage. Insiders' moral warnings create divided reactions. While outsiders' discrimination has sparked outrage among women and men, internal insiders' moral warnings have created divided reactions in the country. Also sparks debate on empowerment through control or through education, awareness or equality. Now, the debates which are going on are majorly on that if you have to apply something impactful, will it be through education, awareness or equality, or through control? And that's very important, because the more you try to control something, the more, it will get out of control. So this really needs to be thought of. Highlights need for critical reflection, not moral panic, ensuring women can make informed choices safely. As we talked about, we have already talked about the example of Uttarakhand. So highlights need to be, there shouldn't be a moral panic, but there should be informed choices about women, and you have to educate women in a manner that actually benefits them. All right. India's progress depends on responding to internal challenges by strengthening trust, safety and equality. Now, where does India's progress depend on? India's progress depends on how we tackle these internal challenges that are going on in our country, and how we tackle the issues of safety, equality and trust, and how do we strengthen it. So I've already covered the whole topic, and let's move towards the last part. I'm pretty sure you also have divided opinions about this whole incident. Let me know what your opinions are on live-in relationships in the comment section below. And that's it for today. I will see you in another video. Until then, bye-bye. Take care.